Fabulous.
Good morning and welcome to our final So What But What If panel event. So this is coming up to exactly 1 year since we kicked off the campaign. However, the campaign didn't start as the So What But What If campaign. It actually started as a women's safety panel event, and it was only ever meant to be a 1 hour event. And yeah, a year later, we've still got 2 or 3 months work ahead of us. So I'm Heather from Mourn for Growth. We've got Laura from Glasgow Girls Club, where we're streaming live to, and Ashley from Thriving Survivors. And this campaign, if you don't know what it is, this is a collaboration between the 3 of us. And it's a gender-based approach to safety in the aim to create a safer future for younger generations. So as this is our final live panel event online, I thought we'd start off by showing you where we started and a wee bit of history around the campaign. And we're going to start that by showing you the video that kicked it all off.
There's never been a moment you were forgotten. You are not hopeless. Though you have been broken, your innocence stolen, I hear you whisper underneath your breath. I hear your SOS, your SOS. I will send out an army to find you in the middle of the darkest night. It's true, I will rescue you. There is no distance that cannot be covered over and over. You're not defenseless. I'll be your shelter, I'll be your armor. I hear you whisper underneath your breath. I hear your SOS, your SOS. I will send out an army to find you in the middle of the darkest night. It's true, I will rescue you. I will never stop marching to reach you in the middle of the hardest fight. It's true, I will rescue you. I hear the whisper underneath your breath. I hear you whisper you have nothing left. I will send out an army to find you in the middle of the darkest night. It's true, I will rescue you. I will never stop marching to reach you in the middle of the hardest fight. It's true, I will rescue you. Oh, I will rescue you.
So even a year on, that is still a powerful video, but it didn't stop there. So after that event, we we had so many more questions than answers, and what was meant to be a 1-hour panel event turned into a 2-hour panel event. And we were then contacted by Clyde One Radio. So that was the 25th of November last year. Now, on that day is significant. It was the kickoff of the 16 Days campaign, which is a campaign run every year since 1991 by the Centre for Women's Global Leadership. And it goes every year, and it'll be going again this year. And last year's focus was on femicide. So with Thriving Survivors, we were doing a social media campaign all around women's safety, and that's what made us pull this together. And we brought Laura from Glasgow Girls Club in because she manages a women's Facebook group for 34,500 women now. So there was a massive platform there for us to share what we knew would be a powerful campaign. So it all kicked off, and that event left us more questions. So Clyde One got involved, and the week later, they were kicking off their Light the Way campaign, which has been so successful that it is repeating again this year, which is amazing. And we did another event with them on the 6th of December last year. So anyway, Laura, Ashley and I went away at that point over Christmas, and we came back together at the start of January this year and decided that really we'd opened Pandora's box, and there was so much to discuss and so many things that we had open discussion to that it felt wrong just to close that again. And particularly as well, there were a lot of survivors already involved and part of this, and they actually named the campaign. So anyway, we decided, let's do a year-long campaign. And our aim was to create a platform to allow all organisations and safety campaigns to come together. And it was so well named by the survivors who called the campaign the So What, But What If campaign. And the thought around this was, well, so what, there's lots of campaigns, okay, but what if they all came together and we made a much bigger impact? We've got everybody's views together and created a paper that will go to Scottish Government early next year that has this collated view and what ifs from everybody involved in the different sectors and organisations and companies. So that is how the So What, But What If campaign kicked off. And it's been quite the year. So throughout this time, we have gone through many difficult subjects. And what we wanted to do was really pick on the subjects that people are uncomfortable talking about or don't want to talk about, but all relate to safety. So in January, we kicked off with the Equally Safe campaign, which was a safety app that was in Glasgow with wise women to allow women to actually track where they felt safe or not. February, we did a youth panel, which was fantastic and a complete eye-opener for me as a mum. March, we had our International Women's Day panel, and we also had our International Women's Day event, which was brilliant. It was our first fundraiser to try and fund some of this panel and of the event and the campaign, but it also brought together so many walks of life, and it really was, you know, quite an outstanding event. April, we introduced our youth group. So it's worth saying there's been two major changes in this campaign. One was switching away from women's safety, because it was made very clear to us actually everybody's safety matters, and there's other, you know, minority groups there that need looked at and, you know, are at risk as well. So that's what became the gender-based campaign. The other one was, we decided that despite the fact this was, you know, it's all about the youth safety, maybe we're not in that youth box anymore. So we decided it was time to bring in some youths. So Laura's been in charge of our youth panel. So this is a group of 3 youths, 2 students and 1 apprentice. She's no longer apprentice, she is now full-time working. But we brought them on, and what they do is they watch over every panel event we've done together and give their perspective on it and their views on everything that we're saying. Because while we're doing it out of the best of intentions, we just don't know if we are thinking the same way that youth are thinking, and how can we keep them safe if we don't listen to them. So that was a major introduction in April for us. And it has been an eye-opener. You know, sometimes they totally call us out on things, and rightly so, and that's what they're there for. So that's been fun. We went on to our perceptions panel in April, which was really good as well. And actually, I'm going to come back to that because we did get a man on the panel on this one, and he totally flipped things round. And as me as a host, I was like, wow, you've totally switched that round, and I have to try and run with this. So we're going to come back to that point because it was a real, you know, pivotal moment in the campaign as well. In June, we went on to grooming and online safety. And again, learned loads in that one. August was a really powerful one as well. We had LGBTQIA+, and there was we put a blog out in advance because we realised that there's a real fear around talking about this subject because not everyone knows what even the letters mean in LGBTQIA+, and then people are so scared to put their foot in it. But actually, this whole campaign is about having a discussion and being able to put your foot in it and learning from it and then making an action point afterwards. So that was a really good one to break the boundaries on that one and open up a safe space for people to talk. And then in October, one of our biggest aim was to have a men's panel and have the men come together and talk. And that was really good. And again, they totally blew it out of the water and flipped around some of the conversations, which was really good. There's also some campaign topics that we haven't covered that we wanted to cover. So the first one was consent. Now, this was solely down to the fact where we'd put it in our timetable came during the holidays, and we just couldn't get everybody together. However, on reflection, consent has been a discussion in every single panel event we have had. So while we haven't had a separate panel event for it, at no point has it been missed in any discussion. No matter what aspect of safety we look at, consent is never there when somebody is abused in any way. And therefore, every discussion we have had has covered consent in it. And the other one we didn't do was sex workers. And we really wanted to do this because, again, it's a subject that not everybody is happy or comfortable talking about. And there's a massive stigma over it. So this one here, the reason we didn't do it was solely because we just couldn't get enough people to come to the table to talk about it. However, the month we were going to do it, some other organisations are very much involved with sex workers, did a brilliant campaign that we have shared and we will do afterwards, which managed to talk to a lot of the sex workers, and you know, it was all around their safety. So while we couldn't pull that one together in the timescale that we had, it was brilliant to see that someone else managed to. And at the end of the day, this is all about all the safety campaigns working together for a bigger voice. So we will be making sure we share that as well and including that in our final report at the end. So that's us almost 1 year on. We are 7 days out from when it kicked off. And this is our final online event. We have one more face-to-face event, I'll tell you at the end. And then the whole plan in this is to bring together all our findings and in January sit and write a paper that will go to the Scottish Government with the collective what ifs and changes that are needed. And that's what this has all been about. So that is the introduction to So What, But What If. And I think I managed to do that in 15 minutes, which I think is quite impressive considering it's a year-long campaign. But enough from me. We want to go on and speak to our panelists today. So we've got Danielle and Marianne from Enough Campaign. We've got Kim from Gilded Lily, Lindsay from Stop It Now, and obviously myself, Laura, and Ashley. So I'm just going to start by going round the table of our guests and asking you just to introduce yourself and what you do. So I'm just going to go from left to right on my screen. So I'm going to start with you, Marianne.
Hi, good morning. Yeah, so I'm Marianne. I work with the Enough Campaign, which is a project which supports teenagers with Glasgow that are working with Glasgow Women's Aid. So we support young people that have been affected by abuse within relationships grooming, sexual exploitation, and we also go out and provide prevention. Thank you.
Thanks, Marianne. And Danielle, you work with Marianne.
Yeah, so I'm the other young women's outreach worker with the Enough project as well. Yeah.
Perfect. And Lindsay?
Morning. So I'm the harmful sexual behaviour lead for Stop It Now Scotland. So primarily I head up the young person service. So we are working with young people who are getting into trouble online, or who are, I suppose, struggling with kind of thoughts and feelings that they might have about young people and about accessing images or peer-to-peer sharing. So quite a broad range, I suppose, of subjects that we work with, but I saw about kind of online safety.
Thanks, Lindsay. And Kim?
Sorry, a bit of technical issue there myself. Hi, yeah, I'm from the Gilded Lily in Govan, which is a women's project, but I particularly run the She programme, which launched this year in August, and that's for young girls 12 to 18, supporting her empowerment. And we're covering, a bit like Lindsay, quite a lot of topics, but collaborating with outside organisations such as Marianne, Danielle, Laura's been in as well, supporting us, and everything from sexual harassment, social media, and just general empowering them. So that's what I do at Gilded Lily.
Perfect. Thanks, Kim. Laura, do you want to give an introduction to yourself?
Hello, I am Laura from the Glasgow Girls Club. I'm the founder of this Facebook group and the GGC Social and Business Club memberships.
And Ashley.
Hi, I'm Ashley Scotland. I'm the founder and chief exec of Thriving Survivors, and we provide a 4-stage process for people to go through and working through their recovery. Sorry, you caught me right off guard there. Even though it's coming.
Perfect. So now that everybody knows who's here with us on the panel, we're going to start off today with just speaking to each of the different campaigns here and asking, what are your successes over 2022? Obviously, everyone's running their own campaigns, and we want to know, where were you at the start of 22? Where are you now? And celebrate those successes. So Marianne and Danielle, if you guys want to unmute yourselves and tell us a bit more about what you've been working on.
Yeah, I don't mind. Do you want me to go first, Marianne? So I joined the team last year. We were quite a new service. We've been operating for about 2 years now. And one of the biggest changes for us, I suppose, at Glasgow Women's Aid was we introduced prevention as part of one of our outcomes for this year, for the next 3 years, I think. So it was like developing programs, engaging in training, and just like networking with different organizations. We already had quite good links with schools, so it was kind of like starting to collaborate with other organizations like Kim at the Gilded Lily and getting into kind of like different places where we mightn't necessarily have been meeting children's needs before. Like we began working with boys in school, which was great because, like you said, like it's quite hard to get boys to engage. So we've had some really lovely opportunities to get in and speak with young people about gender-based violence and like just get that kind of like prevention work off the ground, which has been lovely.
Yeah. We've really seen the service grow, I think, in the last year. Last year we were only a year old. Now we're coming up for 2 years old, and it's been lovely to see it grow. Obviously it's bittersweet because the more referrals you get in, it's the more young people that are needing support. So it's great that their teachers, police, other community youth workers are recognising that the service exists and that this service is a good fit for that young person. And obviously we're seeing an increase in the amount of sort of abusive relationships that young people are finding themselves in. So yeah, it's been good to see it grow, but obviously challenging as well.
Yeah, I can imagine it's difficult watching that increase, but thank goodness there are campaigns there and places for people to go and speak to, and building awareness of your campaign's fantastic. And I think it's great that you've got the boys involved as well, because right from the start that has been the most difficult thing. And the perceptions panel particularly, that we looked at that, and the men's panel as well that we did, that was interesting to get their perspective on why they don't come to the table and talk. And I'll go into more detail later, but yeah, there was article out today in The Guardian, really covering that as well, which is really interesting.
It's difficult for them. We see it when we're out at universities, colleges, even doing groups in schools with older pupils in secondaries. They all know what an unhealthy relationship is, but maybe a healthy one, and it's what to do if they spot it, you know, amongst friends, somebody unsafe behaviour. So it's just getting those conversations started with them. I think it's been really good to start those.
That's fantastic. Thanks, ladies. Lindsay, tell us about Stop It Now. What's been going on this year?
So we've had quite a big year in Stop It Now this year. For the young person's side of the process. So Stop It Now Scotland is the Scottish branch, if you like, of the Lucy Faithfull Foundation charity. So in conjunction with LFF, we've produced quite a lot of resources, I suppose, or had worked with quite a lot of young people. The key successes, I suppose, has been the completion of the Rosa project. So that's the project that I was heading up in Glasgow, and that was running for 3 years. And that was about helping young people who had gotten into trouble online. So that, as I said earlier, it might have been about peer-to-peer sharing the images. It might have been about downloading illegal images. It might have been about harmful sexual behaviour that's been either perpetrated or that young people have been a victim of online. So we've worked with nearly, or just over 70 young people within that project, which was fantastic. I suppose the key outcomes of that, or one of the key things that were popping out in that was that there was a real vulnerability about young people who are on the ASD spectrum and who have learning difficulty, or young people on the LGBTQIA plus spectrum. So especially young males exploring their sexuality, or, you know, and then being exploited or groomed online. So that was a real kind of, not a surprise, but I suppose one of the things that really stood out in terms of areas of need moving forward for young people. So that's been great. On the back of that, we held a conference that was attended by key statutory organisations and other voluntary organisations. There was about 700 attendees for that, I think, as well. And it was independently evaluated by Strathclyde Uni. So the findings are, I suppose, then being looked at in terms of kind of deeper research, or looking to where we need to target, you know, specific resources and where we need to do more, essentially. We've been doing work in schools, and that's going to continue in the next, you know, moving forward in our next plan for the next 3 years or so. And within LFF as well, we've also developed a website that's going to be going online next year, that's specifically targeted for young people who are experiencing maybe problematic thoughts, or a bit worried or concerned about maybe thoughts and feelings that they might have, or who are for looking for a bit of additional support. So there's loads actually that this year's kind of brought to us. We've been really busy and really lucky to have the kind of funding to continue our work.
Wow, that is such a busy year.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny, actually, one thing that stuck out there for me was when you were talking about, you know, support people with learning difficulties and disabilities, because that's something that we actually discussed that we haven't covered as a separate subject in the campaign. But we have to say, as we went through this campaign, there were so many subjects that came up, and we're like, that could be another event, and that could be another event.
Yeah, it could go on continually.
Yeah, and the vulnerabilities that are there as well in regards to safety are massive too. So lovely to hear that there's actually somebody there supporting them and making it like a main part of what you're doing. Thanks for that, Lindsay. Kim, what have you been up to at Gilded Lily? And obviously you've launched the She campaign.
Yeah, well, exactly. That was the biggest, getting the launch. Obviously, we've got funding for a minimum of 2 years just now, which is great to secure that funding. But I would say the biggest win for us was, firstly, as you know, I've got 2 teenage girls myself, and teenagers are a difficult one to really hook into, you know, a programme. And I was a bit nervous as I put it out in terms of, you know, getting the girls on board. But the sign-ups we got, we only had 10 spaces. I had about 30 on a waiting list. So actually showing me, not that I needed convincing having 2 girls myself, but the demand was there. And what was also lovely for me is over the past 10 weeks, the girls have consistently come each week. And that, again, I know it sounds like a small thing, but that shows how much they are getting from something. And the biggest thing I feel is like a big win is giving them a safe space and a very, you know, open, gentle, I want to say, space that they can express themselves without judgment or without being told they're right or wrong. There's no right or wrong. There's just, and for me, that's been lovely. And having the girls saying, I don't want this to finish, you know, but obviously we move on to the next 12, but we would very much like a lot of the girls to come in, and maybe be part of volunteering. But what, for me, the next big win for us is seeing the demands there, and I would love to see something bigger in terms of a drop-in, because it's just that safe space for the girls. And we got a lot, and it's lovely to hear a lot of you say that you're connecting really well with schools, etc., because the feedback from the girls is a lot of the time we're not heard in school. You know, we're just a hassle. You know, they don't really want to get involved when it's, you know, to do with relationships or breakdown, you know, in communication with friends. And really that has to be embedded into the curriculum, just not as a one-off workshop. It's on a daily basis, almost like in every subject. So for me, it's just been beautiful to watch the girls, and I'm very grateful to be part of this in both the SHE programme and part of this panel.
Yes, we said there's no right or wrong. That's definitely something that we have found through the campaign as well, that actually being able to listen to everybody's opinions and views, every single one of those every single one matters, whether it's something you might have thought of or put into play or even considered. Everybody's view matters, because those views are what come into play when you're looking at safety. So it's so nice to hear of all the positive campaigns and how everyone's grown. Everyone sounds very busy, which is, like you say, Marianne, it's bittersweet, but at least you guys are there to support people. What I want to look at as well, without going too negative, is that what are the things that you're struggling to change? You know, what are the obstacles in the way, and how are we going to overcome these? So again, we'll go back to you, Marianne and Danielle.
I think just even, you know, we say we're going and working with boys, I think it's just that underlying, like the gender stereotypes, the gender norms, those social norms. You know, one workshop, like you're saying, Kim, isn't always enough to go in and break those down, and it's good to start having those conversations with young people, but they're really, really rooted. And like you said, it should be part of the curriculum. It should be part of their, you know, even I've spoken with trainers that are saying getting parents involved, because it's not just about the kids, because those things are formed at home. So they're things that we're trying to go in and, you know, break the chain on, but kind of it's hard with one workshop when you're getting into a school. It's really, really hard to have something that impactful. So it would be really great, you know, just to address that and try and figure out ways to overcome that.
Yeah, I think exactly, Danielle, and I think as well we see loads of examples of where people have been compassionate and trauma informed and good practice, you know, where maybe somebody's reported something to the police or to a teacher and they have had a good response. But what I would love to see is for that just to be the norm, where young people are getting a good response when they are disclosing or reporting. And just from the system, right from the very top downwards, you know, we can't change the court system, unfortunately, at the moment, but we see young people getting cases getting adjourned and adjourned and adjourned, and that's just the system at the moment, unfortunately. So it would be great to see a really good service right from disclosure for young people, where they feel safe and heard right through, and that being the norm rather than just a good example of one.
Yeah, I know we had attended like the Police Scotland's, they were like looking at their new outcomes for the year, and I think a big thing that came out of it was like the whole like trauma informed practice, and like, you know, loads of organizations, you know, say they're trauma informed and like attend trauma informed training, but then like in the moment, like I've often seen it where like when young people are disclosing something, someone says something inappropriate or someone says something that maybe isn't the best, and it's like that's not actually trauma informed. So like how are we actually practicing trauma informed practice, like as professionals, how we're, you know, we trained, not just like attending and like this sitting on a panel and speaking about it, like how can we as well learn to be more trauma informed and, like you said, Marianne, like support young people to have better outcomes.
It's really interesting you've mentioned that, because actually Thrive and Survivors had done a whole month's topic on trauma informed and how uninformed a lot of organisations are. And in January, there's going to be a massive topic on, you know, secondary harm that comes from that as well. And it's, yeah, it does seem to be, yeah, it comes up a lot. And I have to say it's come up a lot in the conversations over the year as well. Thank you so much. Lindsay, what about yourself?
I can just unmute myself there. I think through the work that we do, in terms of working with the individuals who are getting into trouble online or who are causing harm, we are absolutely having an impact, and the service that we provide is definitely of value. But the problem is that this problem is not isolated to young people within Scotland. The problem of child sexual abuse is global, national, global. I think the most recent independent child sexual abuse inquiry in England and Wales, it just reiterated what we already know, and it stated that child sexual abuse and the explosion of online facilitated harmful sexual abuse or child sexual abuse, sorry, underlines the extent to which this is endemic in our society, and we need to be doing much more to prevent. More and more young people, I suppose, are getting into trouble online with harmful sexual behaviour. We're getting more young people coming to us as a result of police arrest. We need to be working much harder so that young people have a much better understanding of what the laws are in Scotland and what's okay and what's not okay. And that stuff about kind of boundaries and, you know, just that, you know, the way to behave online, if we're going to avoid young people either causing harmful sexual behaviour or causing some sort of sexual harm online. And the thing is, young people are not aware where the boundaries are. So if we're not talking about this and telling them where the boundaries are, how do they know when they're stepping over that line? Where's the line when it's banter and flirting, and then where's the line where it actually becomes problematic behaviour? You know, when they're consistently asking somebody for pictures, or whether, you know, when somebody's feeling under pressure or they're coerced in some form. So we need to get much better at that. I suppose our organisation, the values are all around hope, really. We hope for a future free for child sexual abuse, and I suppose we all have to live in hope. That's why we do what we do. So we're going to absolutely keep plodding on with that, and we need to. But there is massive amounts of work to do. But you know, we continue.
Amazing, thanks, Lindsay. Kim, how about yourself?
Yeah, I'm always going back to slightly what I said, and I'm going to bring education into this again, as well as I think someone mentioned like what's going on at home, be it parents, carers. I think everyone needs to be involved in these conversations. Yes, it's lovely to give the girls, you know, everybody a platform and a safe platform, but ultimately, you know, we can have all these conversations, but if it's not been had within education at home, then to me, they can go home and start, say, verbalising, but actually, if they're not heard at home, or the behaviour's not changed within the home environment or within school or talked about, then we're never going to get out this cycle, because everyone needs to be part of it. It needs to be inclusive conversations. And I know we're having these separately, you know, probably with a lot of young people, which I think is good for them to have that, but ultimately long term you would like to think that these are just embedded into natural conversations within school, within the curriculum and at home. And I know that's a big ask, I know that's a big, but you need to think big in order to be able to make that change, or else you know, that whole secular behaviour just, it continues.
I absolutely agree, Kim, and I think that's part of the problem in terms of like the stuff that we're doing around kind of harmful sexual behaviour and about child sexual abuse, and that is there is, regardless of how much we talk about it, there is still so much stigma, and there is still so much shame, and you know, and victim blaming, and you know, you shouldn't have been so stupid to send that in the first place. You know, we are missing a trick, and we need to be much more open about talking about these conversations in home and in school, and you know, and just as a general, just in general, really, you know, we are absolutely missing a trick.
Totally, and there's something that just stuck in my mind there as you were talking, was a lot of these conversations are taboo, but a lot of the, they come from maybe families like we've maybe got all our own faith, and that's where it becomes taboo. And this is something that needs to be overcome. So, we deal with a lot of ethnic minorities within Gilded Lily, and it's like, how do we tackle these conversations? Because there are a lot of women do want to tackle it within the home, for their children, for their sons, and I think that's a huge part of it as well.
Amazing, thank you. This actually leads really well on to the second part of the panel event, which is our reflections from the year ahead, or the year past, sorry. And when we were deciding what do we talk about in this final panel, there were so many things that came up. So we couldn't let ourselves get into the same situation we did last year and have a 2-3 hour long panel. So what we decided was that Ashley, Laura and I would pick 1 or 2 things that really stood out for us, and have an open discussion about what that means. And it's not just a discussion between Ashley, Laura and I. We want obviously all you guys in the panel to get involved as well. We'd love to hear comments for anyone watching on Facebook, be it right now or on watching back later. So we're going to start with, there were so many things, and actually when we came up with this idea, I'm like, oh, there's this and there's this, and then I'm like, there's also this and there's this bit as well, and there's this. So this is by no means a complete list, but we when we did the women's panel last November, we talked about these 5 points, and these 5 points developed into 10, 12 points. So we're going to try and stick to these ones. Now, actually, we're going to have much bigger discussions at our live event, which we'll tell you about later. But let's go straight into this. So yeah, Marianne, Lindsay, Kim, Danielle, once we're talking about this, get yourselves off mute, tell us what your experience are within these subjects as well. So Ashley, I want to start with your one, because it's really the core of what So What If campaign is. So you said that it's about opening your mind to others' perspectives has been a real experience for you, and learning that people are people no matter what. So tell us about that and about your learnings this year from the campaign.
So I think learnings is a good word to use. The entire process has been a learning curve, some of it very steep at points as well. I think to pick up on the conversation that Kim and Lindsay were having there, if we don't open up these conversations, if we don't lose the no sex please we're British attitude to things, that, and you can tie it into West of Scotland attitudes and a whole host of other things, and we can wrap it up in all the bells and whistles we like. But actually it's that people are just avoiding the conversation. On Thriving Survivors, we always challenge the difficult conversations. We always look at things that people might find, actually, let's shy away from that, let's not chat about that. And I think this campaign has really, really allowed us to explore some of these more controversial topics and difficult topics in a way that has brought other people on a journey with us. So even just like the men's panel and the guys that got involved in that, it took us a long time to get them on that journey with us, but they came to the table, and like you say, they opened my eyes to certain things as well. It's been a proper experience, is what I'll say for it. I think it's been incredibly impactful. I've got a 15-year-old son, and we often have very open conversations. And in fact, there was an incident had happened within the school, and there was a crime there, and there was a number of people involved, but because it was online, it was like the lines were blurred. I didn't even need to ask my son if he'd been involved, because we've had these conversations. He knows about respect and what's right and what's wrong in terms of how we treat women and how we approach things, and things that we say have impact. So when I did speak to him, he had took the sense to take a screenshot of his name and his username, and it's a bad day that these boys have got to, the ones that are not participating, feel like they've got to get evidence so as that they don't get tarred with the same brush. And I think that is an education piece. Do you know, I think we really need to sit and look at, well, and that brings me to the youth, I suppose, the youth panel. When we were sitting having these conversations, and it was glaringly obvious to me that actually the way we all think and look at this is totally different to the way my 15-year-old son and all his pals are going to look at this. So bringing in the youths at that point really added a dimension to this campaign that I think we overlooked initially. It's been a wonderful experience. It's been great to go on that learning of the LGBTQI and different pronouns, and I think for me the big one in that LGBTQI, sorry, I'm taking up all the time here, but this is sort of, you start to talk about one thing and then you think about another. The word queer. So we had that as the queer panel. And then actually when we were chatting to people, so we had somebody involved that identified as non-binary, and my goodness, she taught us so much in terms of how to approach it. Her knowledge was just incredible, and her understanding as we sort of tripped up every now and again, and the way in which she responded was a learning for all of us. But where they could identify themselves as queer, when we actually then had that conversation with people from a different generation, they found it offensive. So we really had to think about, how do we term this so as that we do not cause offence? I think there's always going to be mistakes made. There's always going to be somebody that says something wrong or puts their foot in it, just like I just did. But it doesn't come from a place of malice, and it really should be about a process of learning. That's my reflection, as it's been a proper eye-opener, and it's something I'll never forget.
You know, actually, the whole mistakes and learnings for me has been a massive one as well, Ashley, because I remember at the start, we talked about, you know, that particular panel, that was it going to be queer? And right at the start, and it shows as well the ages and the different generations, we all said, is that not insulting, saying queer? And then the younger generation, they're taking that word back and making it a powerful word. But and so it's a really difficult one. We're like, well, actually, this campaign's about safety for the youth, so should we use it? But equally, we can't be discounting anybody, because everybody's safety is important. So what's been nice is that, I'm going to say, particularly me as a host, I have put my foot in it and said the wrong things a few times on quite a few of the panels. But the whole point in these panels is to be able to make mistakes and to discuss them and learn from them. And if we don't have those discussions, like everyone here has said, then you can't step forward without starting the discussion. And Laura and I were messaging this morning about a completely different business thing. And I was like, well, we need to start the discussion. Nothing starts without the discussion. So yeah, like I said, actually, just the learnings from it. And it's been so nice to be able to learn about difficult subjects with people that are experts in them and able to talk about them without making us feel, stupid or say the wrong thing. We can actually learn about them. Okay, so the next up, Laura. So Laura, yours actually leads on from what Ashley was saying. You said that you found it really important, particularly the LGBTQIA+ panel as well, because of their lived experiences, and the importance that brings to the panels.
Absolutely, because obviously we started this off with a panel focusing on women's safety, because we've got lived experience of that. We all know about not to walk alone at night, to let people know, to have our keys. Like we've got lived experience of that. But what I found really impactful from the LGBTQIA+ panel was hearing of their lived experience when it comes to safety through the generations. So we had a great age range in that panel, and we had Sheila talking about a really scary moment that she had when she was younger, and then we had Elijah talking about their experience of safety now, you know, as a non-binary person, so non-binary transgender. So it was a real eye-opening education. And like we've all said, you know, mistakes are made, but you can't be afraid to make the mistakes, because that's when the conversations stop. And if we're not having the conversations, we're not learning. So it's okay to make mistakes, but it's about how you then take action and learn and grow from them. And I feel like all of these panel events have really led to real growth in myself and things that I hadn't considered, because it's not my lived experience. It's been a real eye-opener. And I think for me, my other biggest takeaway, and it's a word that's been used so frequently on this panel and every panel, is the word conversation. I think sometimes you can feel overwhelmed in life that you can't make a change because you're only one voice, but actually through conversation, that is the catalyst for change. Like, conversations like this have led me to go and have a conversation with my parents, with my daughter, with my friends, and they're learning from the conversations that I've taken away from. And it's a snowball effect. And it's, if we stop having the conversations, that's when change stops. So don't forget, for me, it's never forget the power of your words and the power of the conversations that can be had to drive and be that catalyst for change, because everything in life starts with a conversation. Relationships, making babies, learning, everything, it all starts with conversation. So it's about, and dealing with the difficult stuff, dealing with the stuff, you know, sexual abuse, the stuff that people are like, oh, like it's, but you know, it needs to be open and chatting about it. Because when we were talking about our panel, where we were talking about when do we educate children, you know, it's right from the get-go, like, this is right, this is wrong. And, you know, it's having those awkward conversations, because that's what's going to break the cyclical change, like Kim and the other ladies have mentioned. So yeah, it's been a real eye-opener, a real great education.
Yeah, do you know, it's funny because one of my biggest things was the youth panel, which I think some of you were on as well, and it was a real eye-opener for me, in a positive way, but also in a little terrifying way. But it was terrifying because the learning I took from it, which allows me to go on and be more positive. So I have got a daughter who's 11 years old, and there's been some major learnings for me. So first of all, the LGBTQIA+ panel came at the perfect time, because when my daughter went back to school, or just before she went back to school, we were out having a curry, and there was another kid there, and he's waving away, and yeah, she said, oh, that's, can't remember the name, that's so and so. And I was like, all right, okay, no, this is a safe space for people to talk. I was just like, oh, that's a boy's name, and they look more like a girl. So then she told me afterwards, she's like, oh yeah, so that so and so, he used to be her, but has changed now. And this was at a really young age. And she was so unfazed by it. It was just, that is what they have decided to do, and they've been totally accepting with it. And I was like, absolutely amazing, absolute eye-opener. Do you know what? The stigmas and a lot of the problems that are there are historical and brought on by adults. And I was, got to say, a little bit proud of that moment, thinking she's just got that right. But then she asked me a question that I have to say, before doing this campaign, I would have found awkward to answer. But she turned around to me and said, if, let's go with John. If John gets a girlfriend, would they be lesbians? And I was like, I don't know the answer to that. I suspect they would just be a couple, hopefully a happy couple. And that's, but she asked me, and I had to say, my boyfriend, he walked off. He said, I don't know how to answer this one. So he got the fear and he walked off. So Lindsay, you want to come in on that one?
I'm just thinking that, like, when if we're talking about changing the narrative, and we're talking about, you know, educating young people and keeping them safe and being able to, I suppose, answer the really awkward questions like that, then part of the work that we need to be doing in school is like or not even just in school, but just like making ourselves aware, is we need to be offering the young people answers to these questions. And if we don't know where to find them, there's websites that are safe spaces online that they can go to find these kind of questions out. Because if we don't know the answer, then we signpost somewhere else and hopefully they'll get the answers there. But if no, then diverts them away from going to Pornhub and stuff like that and looking for, you know, the questions about, you know, well, what do gay people do, or you know, that sort of thing. So sites like BISH, is like a health and relationships advice for specifically for young people, that those kind of questions about if you're transgender and you then have a partner, all that kind of stuff is available in there. So that, like, but just being able to signpost, or being able, or knowing, you know, having that in the back of your mind to think, oh, actually, I don't know, but this is somewhere where maybe we could go and look together. Or let's, I don't know that either, but I'm interested. Let's, you know, and it's creating, I suppose, taking the opportunities and making them into kind of teachable moments that you can, without shame, without stigma, without embarrassment, say, listen, I don't know either, but that's interesting. Let's go and look that up. I suppose, and it's about, I suppose, picking these moments, because they're like wee nuggets that you capitalise on. But I think that's one of the areas that we're really lacking in, is that availability of safe spaces, or knowing what are really good websites to be able to signpost young people to get the answers to these questions, because they might not want to ask you, or they might not want to ask a teacher, and they don't want to look foolish in the middle of the playground. So where else do they find that out? So if they're going to Google it, we want them to Google it and be going to reputable, safe sites, rather than some random forum on Reddit or something.
Yeah.
True. Yeah, so that was a complete eye-opener for me, and I thought it was brilliant. But yeah, like you said, it's been able to have, it would lovely, like maybe a what if for me would be, is maybe what if they were ready in your head. Actually, you know what? Go and have a look at this, or go and have a look at that. Or if it was just the norm to know the answer to these, you know, I wouldn't even call them, I suppose, difficult. Yeah, but just questions that maybe we didn't grow up with. And I guess that's, Laura, like your youth panel that have been involved, they're bringing something new to it. And when we have these discussions, I know that one of the questions that they'll answer for us is, do they know about these resources? So
I think there's a lot of power for young people, though, in just having that safe space to, even whether you know the answer or not, as a teacher, as a youth worker, as a parent, the young person just feeling free and safe to have the conversation. It goes back to conversation again, in itself is actually a really powerful thing, because abuse and secrecy, you'll know yourself, Lindsay, where there's secrecy, that's where it thrives, that's where it grows. And for young people just to be able to think, I can ask these awkward questions, you know, is this what you do in your relationship? Is this normal sexual activity? Even having those sort of conversations with parents, it's just something we've not done before in previous generations. We've not talked about our own sex lives, we've not talked about our own relationships, really. And it's much, much healthier that children now are starting to question these things, I think, moving forward.
Yep, definitely. Actually, it's good. Actually, Laura, your next point was the power of conversation can be a catalyst and driving force, which is pretty much what you just said, Marianne. So, Laura, do you want to go further into that? What your thoughts on were that?
Yeah, I think as well, with the bringing the youth panel on as well, and I think we've mentioned like education is so important, but opening up the conversation so that it's two-way. And I think that has been one of the main things about, you know, why we decided to bring the youth panel on, because, you know, we were seeing our thoughts and feelings or lived experiences, but actually let them listen to it, but then feedback as well, so that we can open up the conversation. Because very often, like we all know, when you speak at someone, you can take in a lot, but actually it's through hearing what they've got to say that then things are challenged and things can change. So absolutely, for me, you know, I hadn't realized that actually just these conversations alone were going to actually change and shape things that I had previously thought. And myself as a parent of you know, a coming up for 3-year-old, I've really learned on how I want to also take things forward as a parent for her learning and being more open, like Marianne said, you know, having these conversations, which yes, I didn't have with my parents, but actually knowing that she's got a safe space as she grows older to speak to me about anything, rather than being like, oh, that's not happening. So yeah, it's been so insightful. And yeah, just let's not stop talking, let's not stop chatting.
So one of my biggest things, I had three things, but I'll go with the youth one since we're on that subject. And for me, it was the whole online grooming and the online dangers. And most of the parents I've spoken to have found this to be one of their biggest fears because it's not something we grew up with. I do remember chat rooms when I was in school, but I had a Spectrum that you plugged in, so there wasn't the same dangers. So you feel so out your depth. And I was like, we are really strict on parental controls on everything. Probably I'd say, well, actually, definitely from my learning on that youth panel was that it's almost a waste of time when they get to a certain age, because every kid in school has got their mobiles and they can see anything you're trying to hide from them, they're going to get to see anyway. And that was such a massive, like, oh, I've just wasted my time. But, and again, it comes back to that conversation. Actually, is it such a bad thing if they see some porn or they see other things, if they know the right way to act and react and they know what is right and wrong? So for me, that was one of my biggest learnings, is that I was almost a bit annoyed at first. I was just like, well, actually, what was the point in me doing all these parental controls and, you know, you questioning my parenting skills and stuff? Actually, it wasn't. It was just, well, you know what, that is just the reality. So it's about having that conversation with your kids. And that was a massive learning for me. The other one that I'm so want to talk about in more detail with everybody, because everyone's mentioned it now in this subject, is the men involved in the whole year. Because we've had the one men's panel, we have had men on various different panels. And for me, so when I come to host one of these panels, I really plan it in advance. I know what I'm going to be asking people and I kind of know what to expect, or at least the discussion points. And I have to say the men are always the ones that throw me off balance, and I have to rejig in the middle of everything the way the conversation or the panel is going to go. And that has happened 2 times. It really stood out for very, very positive reasons. So one was on our perceptions panel, and we had Lee on. So Lee we brought on for one reason, and that was because he works in the trade industry. And, you know, builders and tradesmen have there's such a stigma around them, you know, wolf whistling and being guys and everything. So we really wanted to bring him on in order to discuss that perception, and is actually that the way it is within, you know, the trades? Is that real life? And he pretty much stopped us in our tracks and said, well, why are you still having that conversation? He's just like, I've never come across it. He understands why it's there and historically why it's there. He's like, but actually you could spend all day having that conversation, or you can have the conversation as to why there's not more time, money and focus put in on getting females into the industry, and therefore eliminating these, you know, that perception and stigma. And I was like, you're totally right. You're totally right. Just stumped the conversation that I had planned. And then the other one, which actually both of them brought me back to one point that I want to discuss. The other one was Jeremy. So Jeremy came on a panel, and it was, I'm sure it was a youth panel he was on, and it was about, he's a campaigner he was abused as a child, so he's a campaigner for, you know, guys talking out as well, and being more open and opening that safe space. So yeah, he was saying that actually he turned it around too, that all our messaging is wrong. Now, again, it's one of those moments I'm like, really, everything? But he's just like, why is all marketing and all campaigns, and that's a big box, we all do things differently, but he's like, what if we switched round how we target and educate people, and it's all targeted at the potential perpetrators rather than the potential victims. So here's how you can keep yourself safe. Here's how you do what you do in this situation, what you do in that situation. He's like, how about teaching people who might go out to commit the crimes, teach them before they get to that. What about in TV and Netflix and all your youth programs and soaps and stuff like that, that actually that's focused on more, and it's more focused around the potential perpetrator. And I thought that was brilliant.
Heather, we actually have, within Stop It Now, we run deterrence campaigns with Police Scotland every year that are targeted specifically at the perpetrator. So it's like you're one click away if you offend, and this would be the consequences. This would be the consequences for your loved ones. This, so that it is. And we also have on sites, I think it's Pornhub. Don't quote me 100% on that. But if people are trying to access images of children, we also have pop-up messages that come up and say, this is potentially you might be looking at something that might be problematic, and with a direct link to our website. So in terms of prevention, there is already stuff that's going on, in the background of that. And I suppose if you're not looking for these images, then you wouldn't know that the pop-ups are there. But in terms of the deterrence campaign, I know that was run on the STV Scotland channel last year, and our numbers in terms of people who are accessing our helpline and also hits on our internet go up significantly during the campaign, the deterrence campaign as well. So they are effective. But again, it's about this conversation. We need to do more, and we need to destigmatise it. About looking for help or where to get help.
Yeah, definitely. That's great that it's actually working. You can see the stats at work. So, his point was right. And actually, I guess it comes back to, what Danielle and Marianne, what you're doing as well, and Kim as well, actually teaching about the positive relationships from a young age as well. The conversations, it all just comes back to the same thing, doesn't it? The conversations from a young age about what is right and wrong is a level of that. So I found that really interesting. And it also led on to the next bit that stood out for me was the That Guy campaign. So on the men's panel, I think it was David had said that while the That Guy campaign is a positive campaign, and I really like it. So it's not necessarily a slant on that at all, but he's like, it actually isn't completely representative of all males, because again, we have that campaign, when I first saw it, and I actually think this is what I thought when you were saying, Ashley, about the whole conversation and learning. So when I saw that campaign, I was like, that's brilliant. That's such a good campaign, a male-oriented campaign. And I think it was because it was, again, there's not as many male-focused campaigns as female-focused campaigns, and it probably stuck out. So I didn't look any further in depth than that until David said, well, actually, I am never going to sit round a table in a pub watching football with a pint in my hand. I'm more likely to be drinking a nice glass of wine, having conversations, etc., etc. So for me, I was like, actually, do you know what? It's actually looking more in depth at everything. But again, for me, it's like That Guy campaign is not a negative on that, because maybe we need that whole mix of things. And while there's not a lot of male-oriented safety campaigns, they've made a start. It's a good thing. But yeah, it wasn't fully inclusive, which, yeah, that just threw me, because I hadn't thought of that either. And I'm quite glad I actually wasn't on that panel. That was a men-only panel, so it wasn't another one that threw me off my tracks.
Heather, can I just come in again there as well? So in schools, there's the MVP programme. That's the Mentors in Violence Protection, and that's absolutely a bystander approach. So it is about, calling out stuff that you see that I suppose that is offensive in some way to some person, and it's not just about standing by and letting that happen. So that we've re-looked at the materials recently and created a more kind of online element to that programme as well. So it's been recently refreshed, and it's been run across schools in Scotland that are encouraging young people to step out and speak up and get involved and ask for help and support, or signpost people to, or alert somebody else that this is happening and this is not okay. So it's a really good programme. And I think we should be doing a bit more in terms of kind of promoting that as well, because kind of like that the not that guy advert, that was running very much is about, calling things out and being a bystander and no placing yourself at risk, but just, being able to say, wait a minute, hang on, that's not quite sitting right. So I think that being run in schools in Scotland is a really positive thing as well. So we are encouraging young people to be more proactively involved in kind of, I suppose, supporting each other and calling out stuff that's inappropriate or wrong.
That's so good, because actually for everything that we have discussed and we've brought up and reflected on, there is more resources and campaigns and learnings out there that have even come up. Like Lindsay, you've got some great things there. And actually, I would ask everybody in the panel, for all the things you've told us about, send us the links and send us those resources so that we can collate them, because that is more learnings than have come up in this year, and it just shows you there has been progress. Kim, did you want to come in?
Yeah, and I think I've never heard of the MVP programme, which I will look into that, Lindsay, because this sounds wonderful. But also, I think one of the biggest frustrations I'm coming across in terms of not just with the She programme, but my own experience with having two teenage girls, and this is more a personal experience, but I hear it coming through also from the girls, is, I think it goes back to what I previously said, one workshop is not enough. So it's almost like taking something like you're doing, Lindsay, and it needs to be embedded into the curriculum, because that one workshop, they're like, oh yeah, they'll send us on a workshop, or we'll do a workshop, but actually it's not then embedded into the school. So we're talking about calling people out, or supporting our peers, but actually, so we even take friendship groups, that goes into friendship groups, and working with young people plus having two teenage girls, and that really is not embedded into the system. And that is probably, any schools definitely, they don't want to deal with it.
Well,
MVP,
MVP is embedded, or it is supposed to be embedded into the curriculum. So it's supposed to be a peer learning. So it's the older pupils in school, so for S4, S6, who are then trained in delivering the programme, and then they mentor the younger pupils, and then obviously as the younger pupils come up through the school, then that's meant to be something that's kind of embedded in practice. But it's just about it's meant to be kind of embedded in the ethos of the school, that this is a school that's respectful, and we're respectful of each other, and we're supportive and that sort of stuff. So I know in Shawlands, so just up the road from Govan, that's certainly one of the schools that I was involved in, and they're quite keen to develop the MVP, or they're already running it, but they're keen to kind of keep that updated and developed as well.
Brilliant to hear. And I will say certain schools that I have been into as well, working in various charities, etc., do embrace this. And what's interesting, then I have to look, and I'm not going to name schools, but schools that are seen within the top academia, schools don't necessarily embed it into the system. I may be there, and I've challenged this recently, the wellbeing policy, everything like that. And what you're talking about, that whole peer mentoring, etc., I think is so important.
Definitely.
But actually they don't see it as a priority. That is the difference. That it's really, and they're maybe a year into maybe having it and haven't actually implemented it or trained the people they meant to be training within it. And I think to be able to have more conversations and surely that's going to help the teachers as well, because they are, I do understand, with the whole coming out of COVID, that whole well-being, and what they're under pressure and dealing with is out with the normal. So it's great to hear that, Lindsay, when you're quoting a school there that are embedding into the system. More of that, more conversations, as Laura would say, around that.
Ladies, it has been an absolutely amazing panel, and reflecting back on the year and hearing more about what you've all been up to for the year. I think that really there's been some really key points consolidated, that conversation is everything. Conversation at all stages about all subjects should be open and free and easy. And if you don't know, there are resources out there. So what we will do is collate all the resources. So what's next for So What campaign? On the 9th of December, we have our final event. This is a face-to-face event. Now, the reason we've chosen this date is because it is the end of the 16 days campaign. It marked a year since we had our second panel event with Clyde One. And with that, so originally, like everything through this campaign, there's been learnings and changes and little switches to the timetable. We planned at that point to have our complete report to go to Scottish Government ready, but we've delayed that until early 2023, so January, February, because it's so important that we get this right. It's so important that we get all the opinions and all the what ifs and all the collation of data together and analysed properly, that we don't want to rush it. Now, obviously, it is less than a month away. We can't even analyse this panel in time and watch back through every other panel to get that paper completely right by the 9th of December. Also, we want to get more data and more feedback from that final event. So we have, for every single panel event we've done, we have done a blog. So we've basically taken all the main points and created a blog for it as well to consolidate each panel. And those findings and the what ifs, which we'll come on to in a minute, is what we will consolidate in January in order to bring together this campaign. And using that, what are the asks of the Scottish Government? So every single person that has been on our panel events through the last year or have supported us at our live events, you will all be invited back to come as a guest to our So What But What If final face-to-face event. So ladies, keep it in your diary. And this will be held in the stunning new Clayton Hotel in Glasgow. And it's from 10:30 till 2:30, Friday the 9th. And with that, we will start with some tea and coffee and some wee exhibition stands. And then we will have our final panel event, which is face-to-face. And that's just discussing the key findings with some of our panelists through the year. And we'll all have lunch. And then on to you get to listen to Laura, Ashley and I for an hour where we will consolidate everything so far. And that'll be open for a Q&A as well, and a chance for all people involved to be there together, because it's nice to hear that some of you are already working together, but the collaborations and the conversations that could be had by taking all these 12 panels and putting those people in a room could be absolutely electric. So we cannot wait for that, and we want to use that opportunity to put discussions from that into the paper as well. So those invites will be going out today to all our previous panelists. And then next week on Thursday, the 25th of November, I think that's right, is the start of the 16 days campaign. It's when the first panel event was. We will then open any remaining tickets up to the public to come along as well, because this is about everybody. And while every organisation is amazing, we want the general public to give us their thoughts and views as well. So at the end of every single event, we have asked our panelists, what is your what if? Okay, so remembering that the So What But What If campaign was named by our survivors, and for them there's so many so what's that they've experienced in their lives, and the what ifs are their learnings and movings on, you know, how can we move on? So I want to go around the panel and ask everybody, what is your what if? So Marianne, you're up first.
Hi, so my what if is quite a tall order. I would like to say, what if misogyny became the absolute thing that maybe drink driving has become. So young people think misogyny is unsafe, misogyny is unhealthy, misogyny will cause harm eventually when it catches up with somebody. and it came from the absolute top down. So the campaigns and the awareness that went into something like drink driving, which was absolutely correct for it to go into that, went into violence against women and girls. So from a really young age, it was drilled into people that misogyny is harmful.
Thank you. I love that one. I love everyone, to be fair. Kim.
My one would be, what if we all could talk without judgment? And for me, one of the biggest things is people having opinions, and sometimes they're scared to express like a conversation, or for fear that they will be judged. And a world, you know, without judgment would be a wonderful thing where we could all talk openly and freely.
Just amazing, Kim. Thank you. Danielle.
I was kind of thinking around my what if with something like this, that what if we had, you know, panels, like you said, like where we had all of the organizations coming together, where we had the, you know, words of the young people and their experiences, and just like all had space where we could come together and keep these conversations going and keep everyone's voices heard, and involve all those like statutory organizations like the police, the government, the schools, the colleges, the universities, and get everyone kind of on the same page and working towards the same goals would be phenomenal.
Oh, absolutely. Lindsay?
So my what if, I feel is quite achievable. So it's what if we changed the way that we use the opportunities in PSE and schools to talk about preventing child sexual abuse online and offline? What if we just use that space?
Excellent. Okay. So I've not given Ashley or Laura the heads up here, but I'm going to ask you your what ifs. So Laura, we've had lots of what ifs through this campaign, but what is, after today's panel, what's your what if?
I think probably, and this is probably a similar one to I've said before, but I think what if like all humans became allies to each other, true allies, so that the younger generations felt equally safe growing up.
Ashley?
Mine's is really simple. What if we didn't need all these campaigns?
Amazing. And mine, to finish off, is what if this all works? What if creating this platform for everybody to come together, given their time, given their asks, what if we put it all together and we actually put the government and they actually act on it? What if that happens? How much better are things going to be? So thank you, everybody. Thank you to all our panelists today. Thank you to all our panelists for the last year. I cannot wait to see everybody on the 9th of December. It will be amazing to bring everybody together. And from Ashley, Laura and I, quite sad it's the last online event. I'm sure we'll find another reason to do another one anyway. Or have a wee Christmas break. But it's been an amazing year doing these events, and thank you. And remember, everybody, keep on having the conversations. I think that's what's come out of this. So have a great day.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks.
Thank you
So much. Thank